You're standing in a courtroom, not as a defendant, not even as a witness, but as something far stranger. You are the accused, the accuser, the jury, and the executioner. No crime has been committed, yet you feel a familiar weight pressing against your chest. Guilt, it sounds like conscience. It mimics virtue. But what if, just what if, that voice wasn't entirely your own? What if it had been implanted by those who benefit from your obedience? What if the rules you follow so religiously weren't written by the divine or discovered in your soul, but manufactured, refined, and weaponized to make you easier to control? Would you even recognize it? You see, morality is one of the few forces powerful enough to enslave without chains, to imprison without walls. It doesn't need violence, it has internalized guilt. It doesn't need surveillance, it has your own conscience. Think of the most powerful institutions in history. Religion, empires, corporations, political movements. Each has flourished by mastering the art of moral control, convincing masses not just to obey, but to believe that obedience is good, disobedience is sin, and questioning the rules is a form of corruption. How many times have you silenced a rebellious thought, not because it was dangerous, but because it was wrong? How often have you felt shame for wanting something that society tells you is selfish, indulgent, or impure? How often do you censor your own desires before the world ever gets the chance to judge them? And now, ask yourself, who benefits from this? Imagine a child taught that obedience is goodness. Not understanding why, only that good boys and girls do what they're told. That child grows up, and the faces of authority change, from parent to priest, from teacher to employer, from media to algorithm, but the mechanism remains. Reward and punishment. Pride and shame. Heaven and hell, just with different names. This child becomes an adult, proud of their compliance, ashamed of their doubts. They live not by their own compass but by a morality outsourced long ago, shaped by culture, politics, religion, family, and fear. They work hard. They follow the rules. But deep down, something festers, a hollow ache, an existential dissonance. Whose life am I living? And in those rare, silent moments, beneath the noise of modern life, they hear it again. That voice. Only now, it doesn't sound quite so noble. Now it sounds like a lie you've told yourself for so long, you forgot it was a lie. So here's the great question. What if morality, as you've known it, isn't the light that guides you, but the cage that binds you? What if your guilt is not a sign of wrongdoing, but a symptom of programming? What if your deepest fears about being bad, wrong, or selfish were planted, not to help you grow, but to keep you tame? And most unsettling of all, what if the goodness you strive for has more to do with being accepted than being free? You may feel a resistance rising now, a tightening in the chest, an instinct to defend the very morality we're questioning. That resistance is important. It's a sign we're touching something sacred, or perhaps something sacredly guarded. This isn't about embracing chaos or dismissing ethics. It's about asking, whose morality do you carry? And who profits from you carrying it? Because until you confront the roots of your moral code, until you trace it back through layers of culture, religion, and power, you will remain a servant, not a sovereign. You will fight for values you never chose, sacrifice for ideals that do not serve you, and shame yourself for desires that make you human. The time has come to dig deeper, to uncover the hidden machinery behind what we call right and wrong, to question the sacred, to look at the abyss, and finally ask, without flinching, what if morality is just another tool of control? And if that's true, what now? The trap of morality is not that it exists, but that it masquerades as absolute. You're told what's good and evil, noble and shameful, clean and dirty, as though these truths are universal, timeless, and objective. But history paints a different picture. What was once a virtue becomes a vice, what was heresy becomes science. Burning women alive for witchcraft was once a moral act. Colonizing nations in the name of God was once seen as duty. Obeying authority, without question, was once the very definition of goodness. So, let's ask. If morality changes with culture, time, and power, what, exactly, are we obeying? Carl Jung warned us of the dangers of the collective morality, what he called the moral mask of the ego. According to Jung, when we over-identify with societal ideals, we repress the authentic self. We push away instincts, desires, emotions that society deems bad, and in doing so, we create the shadow. The more we cling to this borrowed morality, the larger and darker the shadow grows. You become the good person on the surface. Polite. Productive. Accepted. But underneath, rage, lust, hunger for freedom, contempt for conformity, all bubble beneath the surface, unexpressed. This creates a psychic split. Your soul becomes divided between what you feel and what you've been told you should feel. And herein lies the problem. The moral code you've internalized may be the very thing making you sick. Not in body, but in soul. Addiction, depression, anxiety, chronic guilt, these don't always come from personal failure. They often emerge from living a life that isn't yours. Friedrich Nietzsche didn't just criticize morality, he declared war on it. Not morality in itself, but slave morality, the kind invented by the weak to shame the strong. In On the Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche outlines how the early priests and oppressed classes redefined strength, power, and freedom as evil, while elevating submission, obedience, and weakness as good. Why? Because it gave the powerless a way to control those with real power. And so the inversion began. Bravery became arrogance. Desire became sin. Authority became oppression. Doubt became heresy. Nietzsche's terrifying insight? Most people would rather be morally good than existentially free. Because freedom demands responsibility. And responsibility requires strength. Let's zoom out. In modern society, who benefits from your obedience to unexamined moral codes? The 9 to 5 system thrives when you feel guilty for resting. Consumerism thrives when you equate self-worth with sacrifice. Governments thrive when you equate compliance with goodness. Religions thrive when your suffering is interpreted as virtue. Morality becomes less about truth and more about regulation, self-regulation. No police officer is needed when you punish yourself. No censor is needed when you silence your own voice. No chains are needed when you choose the cage willingly, calling it the right thing to do. Let's go deeper. Ask yourself, would your sense of right and wrong be the same if you were born in a different time? A different place? A different faith? If you were born a Spartan, you believe war is virtue. If you were raised in a medieval monastery, you'd equate sex with sin. If you were raised in a tribe untouched by civilization, you might view sharing partners or communing with nature as sacred. Your morality isn't universal, it's contextual. But you were taught to defend it as if it were the final truth. And that's the ultimate control. When people believe their morality is divine, they'll fight and die for it, without ever asking who gave it to them. The existential consequence. Jean-Paul Sartre believed morality was not discovered, but created. In a godless universe, he argued, we are condemned to freedom. No external code can save us. There is no cosmic scoreboard, no divine referee. That freedom is terrifying. But it's also the only path to authenticity. You must invent your own morality, not adopt someone else's. And not out of rebellion, but out of conscious choice. The alternative? Live a life ruled by fear, shame, and borrowed commandments. A life in which you never truly meet yourself, only the version of you that others approve of. Most people don't live by morality, they live under it. It's not a guide. It's a leash. Until you confront where your morality came from. Until you examine the roots of your guilt. Until you stop confusing obedience with virtue. You are not free. And freedom begins not with permission, but with radical self-inquiry. You must ask, who told me this was wrong? What if they were wrong? And what would happen if I let myself be whole? So, if the morality we inherited was shaped by culture, fear, and control, what now? Do we toss all moral codes into the fire and embrace chaos? No. That would be another form of blindness, rebellion without understanding. This isn't a call to abandon morality. It's a call to reclaim it. To tear it down and rebuild it, not based on fear, but on awareness. Step 1. Make the unconscious conscious. Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That includes your moral instincts. Why do you feel guilty for resting? Why do you fear disapproval from authority figures? Why do you shame yourself for anger, ambition, sexuality, laziness, sadness? These reactions didn't emerge from your soul. They were planted by parents, teachers, religious figures, media, and society. So the first step is this: observe your guilt. Question your shame. Dissect your shoulds. When a voice inside says you shouldn't think that, pause. Ask, who told me that? And why? Jung's idea of shadow work is not about becoming immoral. It's about becoming whole. Your shadow contains all the parts of you that morality rejected. Your anger, your hunger, your power, your ambition, your sexuality, your ability to say no. These are not evils. They are tools, neutral, potent, essential. When you repress them, they don't disappear, they rot. They turn into resentment, passive aggression, depression, addiction. But when you integrate them, they become fuel for transformation. Imagine being able to feel rage without being consumed by it. To feel desire without being ruled by it. To wield power without abusing it. That is true morality. Not the denial of the shadow, but the conscious mastery of it. Step 3. Redefine what good means to you. You were taught to associate good with compliance. But real goodness is creative, not reactive. It doesn't obey out of fear, it acts from clarity. Ask yourself, what do I value beyond what I was told to value? What does it mean to be a good human on my terms? What kind of morality serves truth, not comfort? Maybe goodness isn't being polite. Maybe it's being honest. Maybe it's not never hurting anyone, but refusing to abandon yourself to please them. This is not moral relativism. It's moral authorship. Once you stop living by borrowed morality, the world may not applaud you. Some will call you arrogant, selfish, dangerous, immoral. Good. That means you've stopped playing their game. That means you've started thinking for yourself. You will lose some comfort. You may lose some people. But you will gain yourself unapologetically, fully, fiercely. As Nietzsche put it, you must become who you are. Not who they told you to be. Not who makes others comfortable. But the unfiltered, undomesticated truth of your being. That is where real morality begins. You don't need commandments chiseled in stone. But you do need principles, consciously chosen, fluid, human. Ask, does this principle bring me closer to truth, or protect me from discomfort? Does it honor my complexity, or force me into simplicity? Is it rooted in love, or in fear? You may choose honesty over niceness. Responsibility over guilt. Freedom over obedience. Compassion over correctness. This isn't easy. But it's real. And it's yours. The paradox of true morality. Here's the paradox. Only those who are free enough to question morality can be trusted to act with true morality. When you stop being ruled by your moral code, you begin to live in alignment with it. Not because you should. Not because you fear hell. But because you see clearly. You are no longer a puppet of inherited values. You are a sovereign being with eyes wide open. And in that clarity, you can finally say, I am not here to obey. I am here to become. So, where does this leave you? You've stared into the machinery behind the moral illusions. You've traced your guilt to its source. You've seen how obedience was packaged as virtue, how fear wore the mask of goodness, and how shame became a leash around your spirit. And now, for the first time, you stand at the threshold of something terrifying and beautiful. Freedom. Not the hollow kind sold by slogans and self-help cliches, but radical, existential freedom. The kind that Sartre called a burden and a blessing. The kind that strips away the excuses, the scripts, the comforting fictions. Because once you realize morality isn't a universal truth, but a construct, a conditioning, a control mechanism, you are left with a question that no one can answer for you. What kind of life will you choose to live now that the cage is open? Freedom is not comfort, it's clarity. Most people will never ask that question. It's easier to remain in the prison of certainty than to walk into the wilderness of responsibility. It's safer to obey than to think. It's easier to feel righteous than to be real. It's comforting to believe in rules written by others than to write your own with blood and sweat and soul. But comfort is not peace. It's sedation. And sedation is not the same as truth. You've been sedated long enough. What happens when you stop playing their game? When you shed the borrowed morality, you stop playing the game everyone else is trapped in. You no longer pretend to be virtuous for applause. You no longer contort your desires to fit someone else's mold. You no longer destroy parts of yourself to be labeled good. Instead, you begin to live. Fully. Consciously. Unapologetically. And that kind of living, real, raw, self-authored living, is offensive to a world built on compliance. You'll be misunderstood. You'll be misjudged. But you will never again be owned. That is the price of liberation. And the reward. What happens when you stop playing their game? When you shed the borrowed morality, you stop playing the game everyone else is trapped in. You no longer pretend to be virtuous for applause. You no longer contort your desires to fit someone else's mold. You no longer destroy parts of yourself to be labeled good. Instead, you begin to live. Fully. Consciously. Unapologetically. And that kind of living, real, raw, self-authored living, is offensive to a world built on compliance. You'll be misunderstood. You'll be misjudged. But you will never again be owned. That is the price of liberation. And the reward. You must become dangerous. Carl Jung wrote, "The person who has not passed through the inferno of their passions has never overcome them." Real morality doesn't come from being tame. It comes from being dangerous and disciplined. From confronting the darkest parts of yourself and integrating them. A lion who doesn't know its teeth is not virtuous. It's neutered. And society loves neutered people. But you are here to remember your teeth. Not to harm. Not to dominate. But to protect your soul from erosion. True goodness is not the absence of shadow. It's the ability to face the shadow and not flinch. To look your fear, your desire, your rage in the eye, and not run, but listen. Only then do you begin to act, not out of conditioning, but out of consciousness. So here's the final challenge. Right now, in this moment, stop and ask yourself, what values have I blindly inherited? What guilt do I carry that isn't mine? What do I call wrong just because someone told me so? Who would I be if I were free from shame? Then, in that silence, let a new code emerge. Not perfect. Not final. But yours. You don't need 10 commandments. You need one. Live from truth, not fear. The final realization. If morality is just another tool of control, then awakening is not about being good. It's about being whole. When you reclaim your wholeness, light and shadow, strength and softness, instinct and reason, you are no longer manageable. You are no longer programmable. You are no longer obedient. You are alive. You are free. And now, there is no going back. The only morality worth having is the one you carve out of your own becoming.